When it comes to your network, visibility is imperative because you can't secure what you can't see. Riverbed's network performance management solution gives you 100% network visibility 100% of the time. Now you can resolve performance issues and security threats up to 90% faster and reduce response time, damage, and cost spent on remediation and containment efforts. Connect with Riverbed today and learn how their NPM solution can protect your network by visiting securityweekly.com/Riverbed. Picture your team being able to map out the external attack surface as it grows and see the same attack vectors as a hacker does. Most tools out there do asset discovery, but stop there. Enter Detectify. It takes an inventory of exposed web assets and automates vulnerability testing for security misconfigurations, expiring subdomains, and risks in third-party software. Here's the cool part. They crowdsource payloads from leading ethical hackers. It finds bugs you actually want to fix and finds them in time. Start a free 2-week trial by visiting securityweekly.com/Detectify. Go hack yourself. SOC analysts are often overworked and underappreciated. In fact, 78% say that working in the SOC is very painful. Yikes. Devo recently celebrated the first ever SOC Analyst Appreciation Day to pay some long overdue kudos to you and encourage organizations to improve SOC analyst job satisfaction and mental well-being. If you missed the event, no worries. You can watch all the sessions on SOC career development, overcoming the challenges of SOC work, and more on demand. Visit securityweekly.com/Devo to watch.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. In an overabundance of caution, we have decided to flip this year's Security Weekly Unlocked to a virtual format. We will miss seeing you all in person, but we hope you can still join us at Security Weekly Unlocked Virtual. The event will now take place on Thursday, December 16th from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You can still register for free at securityweekly.com/unlocked. Also, don't forget to check out our library of on-demand webcasts and technical trainings at securityweekly.com/on-demand. We just wrapped one up with Palo Alto Networks on XDR. It was a pretty good one. I thought that, along with Ali's interview earlier today, between those two, you can really wrap your head around XDR, I think. All right, now on to the news. If you want to follow along with the different news items that we're talking about today, you can go to securityweekly.com/ESW253. All right, the big thing today is about a dozen fundings, 900 million, or billion, sorry. Million? No, million. I don't
900
know.
billion.
I don't know
900
anymore.
billion. That's a lot of funding.
Numbers.
Yeah, but from what we're talking about, would you be shocked if it were 900 billion? It would be like, okay.
My brain just doesn't know what to do with these numbers anymore. Yeah, so a dozen of them. We're not going to spend a ton of time on any individual ones here, but let's start out with some of the bigger ones first. First up, we have Clarity, which I think is supposed to be partially a play on words, since they aim to protect OT devices, Claire OT.
Yep.
Operational technology.
Yeah, that's the intent on this one. They're growing pretty quickly, and I think of all of the funding rounds listed in the news this month, this one's probably the one that has the most validity and the most actual return and growth and all of those things. I mean, obviously, when you're starting to talk of valuations with Bs, things are always questionable as to whether it makes a whole lot of sense to be valued that high. But, I think of all of them out there, the Series E, 400 million, bringing their total invested to 635, it probably does make sense that they might actually be the closest to actually having this value. The other thing I would tell you about this particular one, SoftBank Vision Fund 2 was involved. There's a small number of investors that seem to be hitting all of these big ones. SoftBank, Tiger Global, Lightspeed, and there's one or two others that, whenever there's some kind of astronomical valuation that's out of control, it's usually one of these guys involved.
Is that partially because they're the only ones with the funds to handle raises this big?
It could be. It could be a self-fulfilling prophecy on not having the funds otherwise. But I think it's also a portfolio construction question, right? So as a venture capitalist, you try to create a portfolio of investments that will return the highest return on invested capital for your limited partners. And I think these are the guys that have accepted the fact that, hey, literally I can invest large sums in tons of companies and still expect that if I get one or two of them to be successful, I can return the entire fund. And they're not afraid to take that risk and put that money at risk at that larger level. It's just an interesting portfolio construction problem.
Well, I imagine for them, the worst problem would be not having that funding spent somewhere. Like capital that's not that you don't put to work can't make you any money.
Absolutely. There's two things that are kind of the worst case scenario for venture capitalists. One is not being able to put the money to work. Your limited partners have given you access to the capital. They expect it to be invested as quickly as possible. The second biggest problem after not being able to put the money to work is putting the money into things that never exit, right? They hit that zombie status and sit there. Mm-hmm. That's another bad state because you never get the return. They don't really care if it fails. I mean, they do. They don't want failures, but they would rather see a rapid failure so that they can write that off the books and look on to the next one as quickly as possible.
Yeah. The only thing that makes me scratch my head a little bit here is that it seems like ICS security, OT security is a fairly niche market, and they've got almost $700 million in funding at this point. Looking at Forrester's Wave, just to get an idea of who else is in this market. The other two companies in the leaders, it's not a quadrant, I don't know what they call it in the wave. In the darkest blue portion of that wave is Cisco and Tenable, which, if you had me guess who Clarity's competitors were, I might come up with Dragos. I wouldn't come up with Cisco or Tenable.
Yeah, no, I don't know the market well enough. And actually, funny enough, I had the opportunity to invest in this company twice, and I passed both times for exactly what you suggested. I felt it was a niche market, and it just goes to show you I was wrong, right? Well, maybe I wasn't wrong, but certainly the valuation would have skyrocketed from when I could have got in. So, but yeah, I would have never pegged the competitive companies that you're picking up on.
And I think it says a lot about the market itself that it doesn't quite know what it is, right? It's an important market, the OT ICS market, but I don't think it quite knows what it is in terms of cyber yet, and I don't think companies quite know where they fit in. Yeah.
There's clearly something there, though. I mean, if they've got the revenue to dictate this type of valuation, there's clearly something there. And when we start to think about security of physical items, physical plant, right, the total addressable market's enormous. There is tons of physical items out there that aren't properly secured. So, I just don't think I know enough about the space to really say whether it's going to win or not. It's just neat to see it growing quickly. So this will be one I'll watch closely.
For sure. The fact that they're getting into healthcare, speaks volumes about what people are worried about, and the fact that people are actually thinking about it in those terms now. Even 5-10 years ago, people were thinking about it, but not doing a whole lot in that space. So, Clarity is a good company. Hopefully this will be a great merger, and something will happen here, something big.
Yeah. It's funny when I look back into when I was building up and in the mobile security space, I could have swore that the mobile security market was going to be the next biggest thing, absolutely blow it out of the world kind of market, and it never materialized.
Yeah.
And then the IT/OT side of it's kind of been a similar thing, right? It's I've never seen it blow out, but maybe it's just one company's cornering the market, and that's what you're seeing.
Yeah, could be. And I think part of this, is ignorance on my part, because I don't know the exit options for an ICS OT market, because there's a lot of stuff, like Schneider Electric, a lot of companies outside of security, that have a vested interest in OT and ICS security. And I don't know those markets. Those are not markets that I know much about. Like, for example, a couple months ago, we saw an automotive security startup get acquired by LG. who, most of us know LG maybe from buying a monitor or a TV, or I think they're out of the smartphone market now, but they used to have a lot of smartphones. And it's just not a market I know. So it's going to be, I think, super interesting to see where some of these go, because I think I've got a list somewhere of about 36 OT security startups.
One other thing that I just realized, for those of you that like to read these funding announcements and try to decide, was it a good one, a bad one, or whatever, this one, and I've seen it happen before, they didn't put the valuation number in there. And usually if they don't put the valuation number in there, it's because they raised $4 million on a $1 billion, a flat $1 billion or something, right, where they're giving away a huge chunk of the company to do it. So if you don't see a valuation number, that's typically that either the valuation is below their competitors and they don't want it out, or compared to the money in, it's not substantial enough, and so they're worried about the number getting out. So it's just a little data point. I have nothing on this particular one to back that up with, but I did notice they don't talk about the valuation.
Yeah, always interesting. All right, let's roll to the next one here. Panther Labs, I know little to nothing about. I think you know this one a little bit better, so I'll let you take this one, Tyler.
Yeah, I only know Panther Labs because I've seen them as a cloud scale security analytics company developing infrastructure security and compliance platform. So I do believe that they may be dancing around the space that JupiterOne plays in. So that's why I kind of try to keep my eye on them. They've been around for a few years. They got a $1.4 billion valuation on this particular round, and I'm trying to get the article up to show. Do you have it up, Adrian, to show how much they pulled in with that?
Yeah, it was 120. The raise was 120 million. Okay, I think actually 140. It might have been topped up. Oh no, they're saying a total of 140. So the first round was, I guess at seed or Series A, was 20 million, and then the second's 120.
Right, and here's the catch. Right, this is one of those situations where if you have it up in front of you, who are the investors? I'll bet you it's one of those guys that I mentioned from the beginning that are pumping up prices.
Snowflake, Lightspeed.
There it is. Right, so when those guys get involved, they're just recognizing, hey, I can buy the market. I'm going to take a big shot at it. If it hits, great. If it doesn't, that's okay, because all I need is one of these to get acquired at 10 billion, right? Just one, and I make everything back and then some. So the cybersecurity market is just so hot from a valuation standpoint, they can get away with overpaying for a lot of things. So, here's the thing. I state all these statements like I know what I'm talking about, but back when unicorns were first coming out as a thing, I thought it was the dumbest idea ever. Why are we valuing all these cybersecurity companies at $1 billion? It's so much money. Why do you need that? And it's that seems like peanuts now. So I definitely don't claim to have a crystal ball and can say whether this is going to be good or bad, but it definitely freaks me out.
Yeah, well, for folks who don't know, you do have money put where your mouth is. You're an active investor in security companies.
Yeah, let's not make that overly grand of a statement. I put a little bit of money into a few companies. I am by no means a major investor. I do a little bit of angel work. When I find people I like to invest in a product in a market that I think makes sense, I do put a little bit of money to work. But it's just interesting, to see how this is going to play out. $10 billion, and what do we decide they were called? Octacorns or something?
There was a decacorn as well, and it's in some article.
Yeah, maybe our super producers have the wonderful rainbow unicorn decacorn overlay ready and available. But yeah, I mean, just when you think there it is, that's right. Just when you think $1 billion is a lot, apparently 8 to 10 is the new black. So,
and then occasionally somebody misspells unicorn as Unicron. And for the Transformers fans out there, I'm like, no, a Unicron is 50 billion, valuation of 50 billion.
Now help me understand. So I watched my Transformers, but what is a Unicron?
Unicron was that guy who was like as big as a planet that would consume planets.
Oh, wow. Well, maybe these are the Unicrons. I mean, it's getting there.
So it's an apt misspelling because, that's what I associate it with, is this huge planet consuming, Well, I mean, obviously it's a bad guy in the comic.
Might be a bad guy in this reality as well, though, Adrian.
He's actually sort of oddly neutral. So let's not go down that rabbit hole too far. Let's move on here. We've got a blockchain security firm, Certic, raises $80 million at a nearly $1 billion valuation. So again, talking about security firms that are getting outside my comfort zone in terms of the market area and the potential exits here. This is another one.
Yeah, I would love a briefing. If anybody from any blockchain security company is watching this show, I would love to get a briefing on what your product does. Because I thought in my super limited purview of blockchain, that blockchain was inherently secure. So what are we doing to secure the blockchain?
So from the ones I haven't dived into this one, I don't think, but the ones I have done a little research on what they're actually technically doing. It's just like traditional fraud prevention, like you'd have, like banks would pay for, except with blockchain.
That layer. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're looking for transactions at that layer and then looking for fraud within the transaction, similar to financial fraud in a bank.
Yeah, they're looking for patterns and stuff like that look like fraud. So basically loss prevention, fraud detection for companies that actually manage the crypto.
Yeah, and so to read it right out of this press release on Trm Labs, which was the second of the two blockchains that got funded here, Trm developed the first blockchain intelligence platform that combines cross-chain data with threat intelligence, advanced analytics, and intuitive visualizations to help organizations detect crypto fraud and financial crime. So yeah, it's a financial protection, anti-money laundering type of solution, which, given that major large companies and large enterprises like I forget which ones have done it. Was it Trend? No. Tesla did it, and a handful of other companies put a bunch of money in crypto 6-8 months ago. So it makes sense for them to have to try to understand how that stuff works from a financial fraud perspective.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, no FDIC backing there. Once it's gone, it's gone.
It is gone.
in most cases, unless you have the FBI to recover some of it, like the pipeline case there.
Yeah. Either way, I'd like to see a briefing from one of these blockchain intelligence companies at some point in time. Maybe I'll reach out.
Yeah. So you mentioned TRM Labs. That's number 5 on the list. They raised $60 million.
Tiger Global.
Yeah. And are there any others on the list that you guys want to cover here? There's a few I want to touch on, but I'm going to skip some of these. And the ones we don't cover, I'll just go ahead and read the short version.
No, man, you take it and run with it. I just looked down the list and love all the names, right? Lumen, Casada, Grip, Truffle, some cool names in here.
Well, if you're going to read the names, you might as well.
No, you do it, man. I just said the names. You talk about what the numbers are.
All right. So Iron Scales raised $64 million in a Series C. We just talked about another blockchain company, though they pitch it as blockchain intelligence. TRM Labs raised $60 million Series B. Torque, TORQ, raised $50 million in Series B. They're doing security automation for looks like maybe a DevOps spin there. They say modern digital enterprises. When I hear that, I think, okay, they're going after the DevOps crowd.
Yeah, I'm going to stop the next one, Adrian. Read the next one, but I have a comment on it.
Yeah, definitely. GitGuardian, who I have briefed with, and I have tested their product. Though I've not written a review of the product because it didn't fit into the attack surface management space, which I was reviewing at the time. GitGuardian raised $44 million to offer comprehensive code security, which is not what they're currently doing.
Yeah, I don't know the history of the company, so I can't talk about any pivots or anything like that. But I can tell you what has me excited about. Certainly the buzz in the press release. I've not had a briefing, I've not had a demo, but the buzz in the press release and kind of how they position themselves in the press release is interesting because I'm a big fan of the GitOps security model, which I may have mentioned on the show before, but really looking to secure applications as they're being developed, right? Which is the old shift left paradigm in the AppSec world, but it's being applied in the new paradigm of where developers live, which is in Git directly. So I think this has got some potential just by the buzzwords I'm reading anyways.
Yeah, so before now, GitGuardian has focused on discovering secrets and things that shouldn't be exposed in code. So pretty straightforward. They had two products. One is free and open for anybody to use if you're using a public code repository, I think specifically GitHub. And then the paid for version can also search private repositories. And I think it supports more like GitLab, Bitbucket, and also private repos on GitHub. And so this is, well, I mean, certainly $44 million. You can build a lot of product with that. This has them expanding into much more the code development pipeline, the AppSec feature set than what they're doing right now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they butt their heads against SNCC and some others, though, given that one or two other companies have that GitOps approach to security as well. So it'll be neat to see if they're successful.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense. You see other folks, SNCC, $8 billion valuation. You see Orca, bunch of these others, Laceworks, with huge raises. It makes sense for them to go in that direction, especially if they've already solved some scanning code at scale issues with their current product.
Absolutely.
Next one, Lumen secures $25 million in Series B funding. Already starting to look small. $25 million for Series B. CISA raised $23 million in Series C funding. Grip Security raised. There was something interesting about Grip Security. They raised $19 million in a Series A. Yes, they are the latest Weil Ventures backed. Led by Intel Capital, but Weil Ventures kicked them off with a $6 million seed round. And so it looks like we're reaching this point where I've noticed cloud security, DLP, and data security are starting to get rebooted, and we're starting to see a secondary market of companies popping up with either more modern versions of it or just new takes on what's been tried in the past here. And this one looks like it's going after some of the CASB use cases. So it's a new take on securing the SaaS that your enterprise uses. Especially since the big thing with CASB is you have little control over SaaS products. So what can you do with some of these security issues and vendor management concerns?
CASB is barely a few years old. Like, is it really ripe for disruption already?
Absolutely, because I think so. First of all, the model, like you needed tons of users. All the licensing was by user model, and it ended up being one of those things that I think a lot of organizations, some of their use cases only applied to maybe admins or executives or something like that, only a portion of their employees. So it was kind of tough to, and I'm, a lot of this is just based off of working with these companies, but there is some guesswork here that they just never really saw the deal sizes they needed to see for that model to work. That and implementing it was awkward at best. So I think where we ended up, the API-based ones made more sense, but there were a bunch of reverse proxy ones out there where Salesforce changed their website, all of a sudden your CASB stuff would break in a really bad way. Nobody can use Salesforce now unless we either turn off the CASB or wait for Salesforce to, or not Salesforce, but the CASB vendor to, update their product. Yeah. So, Yeah. I mean, it was a combination of things, but that's the fastest market I've ever seen go from coming out of stealth to, like 75% of it being acquired. All that happened in like 3.5 years. It was really, really quick.
That's why I was saying, and I don't follow that market super closely. That's why I was saying, didn't it just start? Wasn't this market just born? But hey, it seems to have gone up and down and in and out very quickly.
It ran from 2013 to 2017, and now we're seeing the last stragglers kind of get picked up. Looks like Netscope will be able to, self-sufficient. They'll probably IPO at some point. BitGlass got picked up, I think. It seemed like on the cheap. I'm trying to remember who picked them up, but I can't at the moment. But most of them are gone. There are just a few stragglers left, and already in cloud security too. We're seeing some of the last of the early cloud security vendors like Cloud Passage get picked up kind of on the cheap, and now all that's rebooting again. with the Laceworks and the Okta, or not Okta, Okra. No, not Okra.
Okra. No, wrong.
Orca.
Okay.
Okra. That's what I'm going to start calling.
A lot of it's getting consumed by the SASE market as well, so it's transforming. Yeah. Netscope is a good example of that. Taking what they had, moving it, rolling CASB into something, rolling other cloud security into something else, and now the hot new thing is SASE, right? So I think this is where this is going. This is an interesting space, right? What Grip Security does is, basically asset inventory for your SaaS apps. So it's a slice of what both your and my companies do, Tyler. And it'll be interesting to see, again, if this plays as a standalone or if it gets consumed into a larger market. I think probably the latter, but who knows?
Yeah.
All right, and Truffle Security was an interesting one as well.
I read that one. Truffle Hog, the tool, the secrets tool.
Mm-hmm.
Did the truffles go along with your okra, Adrian?
Yeah, might as well. We might as well make a meal out of it, right?
Might as well. Yeah, so that one's neat. I hope they get. They didn't take a whole lot. Truffle did 14. Well, I guess 14 million, led by Andreessen Horowitz. Based on their Truffle Hog open source tool. There's the multi-unicorn. I love the new unicorn icon with multi-horns. That one's neat because it's an open source tool. And actually, if you click on the link that's in the show notes, I love how this one's presented. It's just like, hey, here's what we do. Here's who we are. Thanks for
a screenshot.
Yeah, I mean, I just love it. I think it's just super down to earth, and these are the guys that I hope win. I hope these guys really win.
Yeah, and it's I think part of the reason is because there's not a bunch. It wasn't a press release created by a committee or by a PR team or something like that. It was created by the founders, and you can tell, and that's it's refreshing. Yeah. All right. New VC firm, Ballistic Ventures. Looks like we have another cybersecurity focused VC firm here, focused on early stage, seed stage, it sounds like. We've seen a ton of these. Ron Gula, Weil Ventures, ForgePoint.
J-Leak's one. What is that? Sky, I think it is. J-Leak does.
Yeah, seen a bunch of these.
Yep, Sin Ventures.
And this one includes the only name I recognize was Kevin Mandia, his strategic partner.
This is a stacked team here. Ted Schlein, Kleiner Perkins, I believe. Yep, Kleiner Perkins, Kevin Mandia, Barmack. He was former AT&T. Roger Thornton.
This is a very stacked team.
Was at Fortify and Alien Vault. So, I mean, there's some heavy hitters here. It'll be interesting. I'm not sure what the world needs is more funding for cybersecurity, but, good for these guys.
My only surprise on this. My only surprise on this one is that with announcing their firm, they're announcing the first close, which notice it says first close of first fund, targeting 250 million. So they don't have it quite fully funded yet, but they're shooting for 250 million on that first fund. That seems so small for them. For the how stacked the who's who is here. I mean, Ted Schlein can probably go get 500 to $1 billion on his own. Like, he's got that level of credibility. Throw in Mandia in there and a couple of these other folks. I'm surprised it's only 250.
Yeah, I mean, they are early stage, but we're seeing those early stage deals getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right?
That's right.
Yeah, seed rounds look like A's and B's from 5 or 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
Another interesting one, Mimecast, being taken private by what I believe is a private equity firm in a $5.8 billion all-cash deal.
Wow.
So that's a big one. If I recall, where were they public on? NASDAQ?
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a PE play.
Yeah, so that's a huge one. So it'll be interesting to see. And if I can recall, they've done pretty well in the public market. They didn't wasn't a FireEye situation or anything like that. I haven't followed them recently, but I think they've done relatively well out of all the public cybersecurity companies. So I have no idea what the plan is here with them. If they're gonna be some kind of strategic acquisitions or something like that, turn them back out, send them back into the public market. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just looking at their overall ticker price. Definitely have been doing well, or certainly over the last couple months anyway. So it'll be interesting to see what the PE firm does. Typically, these guys will restructure, acquire them in, restructure them, squeeze them a little bit, introduce some operating efficiencies, and then re-roll them out somewhere or sell them to somebody else. So.
Oh, that unicorn with all the horns, that was the decacorn. It had 10 horns.
That's the Unicron.
No, decacorn, because it was 10 horns on its head.
All right, fair enough. This one, we got to trim off 2 of them, Goose, because this is only an octacorn that we're talking about. Actually, what was it, 5.8 or 8.5? I don't remember. It doesn't matter.
Well, I was saying 8, but, in another month, I'll probably wish I'd said 10.
Yeah,
it was 5.8, so you're both right.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. We're both right.
Yeah, so let's move on from all the funding and the market stuff, and we've got some trends, some new products here, some other interesting stuff. One, I forget the name of the company that got hacked. Found out they had been hacked for 5 years, and ran most of the world's SMS messages ran through this company, and they tried to make light of it. This case, number 15 here is what we're looking at. If you're following along while listening at home, seems a lot worse to me than casually finding out you're hacked for 5 years. And so this hasn't been proven yet. This is alleged that this leadership at this company was selling access to SMS messages. A Swiss company, no less.
Well, from my understanding, and I have very limited understanding of it, but from my understanding, they originally ran a company that when you did like 2FA, it would send the SMS for you on behalf, and then they started actually just sending those codes to other third-party governments, right? I mean, there's no is this shady or not? This is just we're just going to sell shit to other government agencies because they're willing to pay us a lot of money for it.
Yeah, they started out doing automated text messages. Probably all of us get some of these, retail promotions and stuff like that. Reminders, you've got a doctor's appointment coming up, that kind of thing. And yeah, I guess security codes, was just different data, same use case, right?
Yeah, and then in later in the article actually states that the company co-founder and COO, Ilya Gorlik, was also providing another service, selling access to Mito's networks to secretly locate people via their phone. So not just enough to send the SMS, but actually physically find out where that person is located.
Oh.
Contracting with government agencies, according to employees. Absolutely disturbing.
Yeah.
It is disturbing, but it's not hugely surprising because all of these technologies are dual use, and they always are, because if you can do good with them, you can do bad with them as well. And this isn't the first time we've had this problem with mobile surveillance at all. We have euphemism, lawful interception, but it's surveillance and it's mass surveillance, and we know that, and it's creepy to think about and it's horrible to think about, but it's not surprising. I agree with Adrian. Part of what's surprising is that it's a Swiss company and most of the engineers worked in Germany. So that's a little twist on a theme, right? But I don't think the idea that somebody would take something that's potentially digitally transformative, the ability to ping your customers, your patients, your whomever, and say, hey, your appointment's coming up, please press C to confirm or whatever, they would take that and use that because it's just too easy to take it and turn it on its head. And so I don't think that part's terribly surprising. Gross, disgusting, yeah.
Let me throw a question to the two of you, though. Like, if we say that, okay, sure, so they're selling physical locations of people or selling some SMS information that transferred back and forth. How is that any different than Facebook selling all of our stuff that we look for, or Google selling our searches? Like, is location any different than what I search? And I'm not suggesting that either is good. I'm simply suggesting that is it really as bad as we initially think of from an ethical standpoint? And I don't think there's a clear answer. I think it's a gray area that everybody's going to have their own standards on.
Well, it's how the company handles it. I think it's clear to most people that, when you use Google, you're part of the product, and that they monetize that stuff. Whereas in this case, like, I pay Verizon, like I've got this brand phone with this, telco, I've never even heard of this other company, that's selling my data. I think that's where some of the trouble is a lot of this stuff is invisible to the consumer, or even the enterprise. And, these are not third-party vendor issues. These are fourth, fifth, sixth-party vendor issues. There's not a great public understanding of all the hands that this data is flowing through.
Yeah, I
agree with you to an extent. I agree that part of the problem is the downstream effect. But I think, Adrian, you're taking into account that you are, and a lot of the people you surround yourself with, are aware of what this data monetization means. I think there's a huge part of the population, even if you're talking about Facebook, even if you're talking about Google, don't quite understand the implications of using these services. I know it seems crazy, but I really don't think that it's as straightforward as you think, or those of us on this call, or those of us who are listening to this podcast think, because they're not really actually thinking about it. And there's sneaky behavior on the part of some of these tech companies. It really, every time you do an update, you have to change your security permissions. And if you don't do it right away, or if you forget or whatever, they can change your position and start tracking your location. They can change your permissions, rather, start tracking your location, start saving your web history, start doing all of these things. That is a little sneaky and underhanded. And, I've gotten caught on it. And I live and breathe this stuff every day, just like everybody listening and watching. It's not as straightforward as, well, it's Google and everybody knows it's the product. It's even if that were the case, some of the things that they do make it really hard to protect your own privacy, to protect your own data, especially in the US. I think.
I've got to say, it's the number one question I get when I talk to non-technical people and they find out what I do. They ask me privacy questions about the big tech companies. That's the number one question I get. In fact, I've been frustrated trying to get a hold of the artists who did, not the one in blue, but all the other ones, from the tree over to the window here, that does our posters for B-Sides Knoxville. And I think part of the reason I couldn't get a hold of them is I was using my Gmail account to try and get in touch with them. And one of our other organizers finally got in touch with them and found out like he won't touch or get near anything Google related. And very much traditional artist, all this stuff is silk screened. He does, specifically this kind of psychedelic 70s looking, rock concert poster, album cover type art. And you're very, very much, not a technical person, but very, very untrustful of Google.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially, and I think we can wrap the privacy discussion with this because I think we could talk about it all day. But even if you rewind 10 years, right? Did you get those questions about privacy 10 years ago? I know I didn't, or even 15 years ago. I know, right? And so that's kind of a newer phenomenon for the mass public to ask those kinds of questions. And if we talk about this particular case, I think we found it early, but they could keep doing this easily enough and just say, hey, it's our data. We sell the data. That's just tough, right? So from an ethical standpoint, it's a very, very difficult problem and certainly difficult to solve.
Yeah, it hit mainstream media a couple of years ago, and I think that's a big part of it. Is some of these are becoming mainstream media stories, and I assume that's how most people find out about it.
Yep, for sure.
So yeah, the next one, another potential criminal case here. In fact, I think this might be more than potential. The previous, the Swiss company, and the folks involved with that one is more alleged. Whereas the reason that Ubiquiti had a big breach earlier this year turns out to be an internal employee trying to sell his employer's data back to them, trying to extort them from data he stole from the company. Yeah, how'd that work out?
Doesn't quite have the ethical gray area of the previous one, right, Tyler?
That's right. There's no gray area on this one. I think this is pretty clear cut. You screwed up.
And I love if you read the article, you go in and he's like, well, he thought he was good because he was on a VPN. That's my favorite part.
Watch too many YouTube videos. Yeah, posing as an anonymous hacker sent the company a nearly $2 million ransom demand.
And then he went in and changed the logs. They clearly didn't have an eye on that. So he was good. He used a VPN. He changed the logs. Good to go.
Yeah, and then he tried to pose as an anonymous company whistleblower.
This is good. This should be a movie. He shouldn't get any royalties from it, but this should be a movie of like stupid hacker tricks or something.
Yeah, it's and he just cloned hundreds of private GitHub repos. It sounds like so he was taking code. Yeah,
you're toast.
Yep. Yeah, I run into this all the time. Actually, back when I used to be an incident handler, we had all kinds of insider things, and it was so funny because part of what they did was it was the same pattern every time. It was like some of what they did was really brilliant, how they thought through it, and you can tell they really obsessively thought through it, but to a certain point, to the point where they didn't really understand how things worked. And then it was just as dumb as you can imagine, like so easy to catch them. So speaking of mobile security, SentinelOne is trying to bring it back, Tyler.
SentinelOne? What are they bringing back?
Singularity Mobile.
Sexy back?
Listen to this tagline. Combat the rising tide of mobile threats with on-device adaptive real-time mobile defense. Is there a tide of mobile threats that I haven't seen somewhere?
No, there's not.
I didn't think so.
Nope, definitely there isn't, and I'm not exactly sure why anybody would pay for this. Maybe they bundle an MDM from the management side of it, and that's where they're going to try to hook people. I haven't looked at this deep enough to know, but if you're just talking about, mobile protection, it's kind of pointless.
Katie, do you want to install an IPS on your phone?
Yeah, sure. I'll do it over VPN while we're at it.
Yeah.
We can just install it over VPN.
How many ways can I kill my connectivity here? And they're very quick to say, "Oh, it's not going to hurt your battery too bad," but
too bad. Not going to hurt it too bad.
Again,
is that technical lingo? Too bad.
I remember Zimperium had a product here, ZIPS, and just never found anybody really using it.
Shocking.
Yeah, I mean, really, what this is, in looking at the website, is it's an extension to their Singularity XDR product. And they're just saying it's just another endpoint and another endpoint that they're going to pull data from and protect against. And so, I don't think it's going to get a ton of pickup, but it is potentially a check the box feature in a broader XDR solution.
So I am testing Palo Alto's Cortex XDR right now, and they do have a mobile app. I can't recall if they have one for iOS, but they do for Android. And as far as I can tell, it's just checking the apps on your phone. It might be doing something a little bit deeper there, maybe some configuration checks, maybe checking to see if the phone is rooted. But the main thing that I've noticed is it's just checking the apps on your phone to see if any of them are malicious.
Yeah, and honestly, the main thing it's doing is checking a box so that the analyst firms go, "Yep, they've got it." That's literally it.
Yep. All right, next tool here, Pip Audit. Good to start seeing this. So apparently Google is backing this in some way. I don't fully understand how Google is backing it, but a couple of folks from Trail of Bits, William Woodruff and Alex Cameron of Trail of Bits, put together a tool to look for vulnerabilities in Python packages. So, if you're dependent on stuff from PyPy, and this is just something I think we're going to continue to see, especially, we've had a few items in the news about the NPM package library, and some attackers getting access to packages there, attaching malware to it. So this is long overdue. Good to see, especially open source software you can use to protect or scan the packages that you're grabbing.
Yeah, this is simultaneously to me a "where have you been all my life?" and a "why did you bother now?" scenario. And what I mean by that is, where have you been all my life? Because it just makes sense that when I install through Pip or whatever a package to just do a quick audit on it, right? That makes total sense. Where have you been all my life? That's the obvious, should be there. But then why now? Because I most likely have SNCC in my GitHub or Dependapot built into my GitHub, or I'm using some other dependency checker anyway. So kind of a who cares at the same time. I think the big benefit for what I see here is the small developer, the individual developer, those people that are not running a bigger tool for security within their code, they'll just Pip audit everything, and that's just a great free service. So I'm very, very happy with it for that.
I think the average person would be shocked at how few heavily funded startups are probably going to go with the open source tool. And if there wasn't one, they would just be going without anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they won't. They won't use the open source tool. They're going to use something built into their CI/CD pipeline or built into their GitHub repository. Yeah. Why would I have my developers run Pip Audit ever? Doesn't make sense.
Well, I was arguing that you wouldn't see them going for a large commercial solution like SNCC.
No, well, my point is they're already going for. Are you talking about the enterprises going for SNCC or the individuals?
No, early stage startups.
Oh, early stage. I heard companies, bigger companies. 100%. Early stage startups. You're spot on. They don't use anything at all. So this is a great benefit to them.
Yep. And it sounds like that's why they built it. in the article, they talk about, the fact that there was really nothing license free or open source to do this. So that's why they made it.
Yeah. And I mean, it goes with my commentary about individual developers, right? Individual developers are the same thing as early stage startups.
Yeah. Katie?
Yeah. TrailBits has really been very good over the years about supplying free or near free tools to the developer community just to make it better, really believing in the mission. So this isn't surprising to see for them. And, it's great if it helps even just a little bit.
That's the key. If it even helps a little bit, then it's awesome. Thank you for putting it out.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, TrailBits also gets credit for building the Mac OS pieces for OS Query.
Yeah. I think they did. I think you're absolutely right. They've done a ton of amazing open source work over the years. Their founders, whose name is escaping me, I love the guy. He's just such a nice guy. Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan Guido. He's always been steeped in that background and persona, and the whole team that he's worked with and built up over the years really focuses on this. It's pretty impressive the quantity and quality of open source stuff they've built.
Yeah, their commitment to the community is great. Obviously, they're getting plenty of business otherwise, that they have the availability to do this, but I think it all goes hand in hand, that they do really good work. They make their money where they need to make money and then give back to the community.
Yep.
CISA's advisory panel is set to make recommendations on major cyber topics. Katie, did you want to take this one?
I had much greater hopes for this article when I originally saw it this morning before I read it, because the article doesn't actually say what's going to happen. It just says that there are going to be good things coming. There are a lot of really smart people, again, on the panel, like we talked about with the new VC firm coming out. So a lot of good people coming together. Hopefully this will be a joint effort. There won't be any opposite side of the aisle funding about this, because it looks like it's getting into some political issues, and cybersecurity, in my opinion, just shouldn't be at all. So there really wasn't as much meat here as I was hoping when you sent the article over, but hopefully this is an indication of more concerted things to come.
It's interesting looking at who they've got in there. Jeff Moss is in there. Nicole Perlroth, cybersecurity reporter, journalist, who just this is How They Tell Me the World Ends, I think is the book she just released recently. Ted Schlein, who we just talked about, Matthew Prince of Cloudflare, Stephen Schmidt, CISO of, is he CISO still of AWS? Very, very interesting lineup here. Alex Stamos always seems to be connected to these sorts of things. It definitely a who's who. So it'd be interesting to see what they do with it, if anything. Hopefully, it's more than just for show.
Yeah, I mean, they've got some heavy hitters. They've got real practitioners. They've got people who've done some amazing things, have really moved some mountains in cybersecurity. But it's CISA, so I don't think we're going to see anything immediately from them. I hope I'm wrong. But when they say we're at a pivotal moment here, I think that's true, but I'm a little less enthusiastic about what's going to happen, because the new executive order on cybersecurity, that didn't really do much to advance cybersecurity, really. So hopefully this will be something, but cautiously optimistic over here.
All right, next up we have a spicy take. I want to do more of these. Keep an eye out for, in fact, feel free to send us any if you see any spicy takes. But this spicy take, speaking of Matthew Prince, Cloudflare's CEO, if you take a picture unplugging your Palo Alto Networks firewalls, you could win a trip to Oahu. You could win a trip to Hawaii.
I love this.
I don't know why they picked Palo Alto. I think part of it is just the name, the location, Palo Alto, California. In the pandemic, some folks said, hey, if we're going to work remote anyway, we're going to move from the valley to Hawaii. So I think it's maybe just the coincidence of the name pointing to the location here that got them picked on.
Yeah, well, it is, but also Cloudflare is a cloud-based firewall essentially, and they're saying, hey, dump your legacy garbage and come up to a cloud-native one, and we'll give you a chance to win. Yeah,
so it's always funny, when vendors go this marketing route and and start throwing some shade at their competitors. It's fun for us.
Oh yeah, it definitely gives us some interesting topics, like the chili peppers and warning hot take up top. So, super cool. I love it.
Yep. And our squirrel story of the day is Salesforce Plus, which putting a plus on the end of something these days means it's a streaming service, and that's exactly what it means in this case. So I did a double take when I tripped upon this the other day. And sure enough, I mean, it's like looking at the dashboard, like logging into Discovery Plus, like a lot of similar style, like reality style, talking to small business owners who are struggling through the pandemic, those kinds of TV bits.
Yeah. So actually, funny enough, for those that don't know, well, I guess everybody knows, but I'm CMO at a high-tech startup, and we've been leaning very heavily into video, like trying to do more and more video content. And right now, one of the problems that we have is we're distributing a lot of stuff on YouTube and Twitch, right? So we have channels and like everybody else. What's really neat here is, and I know this was meant to be a tongue-in-cheek squirrel joke, why are they doing this kind of scenario? But I think I actually grasp it and understand it, right? If they're putting out high quantities of content in a video format, let's make it easy to grasp in a way that people are used to. So, hey, good for them.
Maybe it's the Quibi of customer relationship management.
I don't know.
The Bombshell is I watched some of it, and it's decent. Yeah. The stuff I watched, at least, is it's not all native. Some of it's native. Some of it is licensed. Looks like they've hired other firms to produce it. But a lot of it's pretty decent.
So what is it like? Here's how to sell. Here's how to convert your customers, or?
Yeah. So well, they've got different shows with different points. So yeah, one of them is definitely like, here's a better way to approach sales. Here's a better way to use SDRs. Here's a wrong way to do it. So it's certainly relevant to what Salesforce does and what they sell. But then, like, one of the other shows was just a lot of it were interviews with small business owners, that struggled through the pandemic, and interviewing them about how they survived and how they evolved to survive the pandemic.
Hey, let me throw this at you, Adrian. Bloomberg Television had to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
It started as Bloomberg terminals that all of the traders used on their desks. That was what the company was based on. And all of a sudden, Bloomberg TV came out of it. I'm not surprised, and I wouldn't be surprised if this does well.
I mean, it's, the first stab at it, there isn't a ton of content on there, but the stuff that's on there is well thought out, well produced. The interface is slick and feels and looks like any other streaming service with the punctuation plus after its name.
I think we need an ESW plus. Oh wait, that would be redundant.
That would be redundant. We're already a streaming service.
Dang it.
And on that bombshell, thanks so much, Tyler and Katie, for joining me today. And a big thanks to everyone watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. We'll see you next week.